Many of us grew up all our lives knowing that when we grew up, we wanted to have a pet store. I know that was my dream, and for all of my animal-loving friends, that was their dream. Enter in the internet, and all of a sudden, everything went online. And if you wanted to start a pet shop or some brick-and-mortar store, you had to do the numbers, and you realized that you would have to have a very strong online presence to pay for the overhead. And so the natural conclusion from many business people was, well, then why have the brick and mortar? Why not do just the online portion of it? Well, the online revolution didn't kill the dream. All it did was change it. And now we are starting to get pet stores that have a different model. It's not about having just a bunch of old cages against the wall collecting dust, or having just the most basic of animals because that's what's going to sell to the normal person walking through. Pet stores in this day and age are taking it a step higher. They are educational centers that double as a place that you can find your reptilian companion. And one of the most inspirational executions of this is the SHAP by Summer Winston. Summer has created a model of what pet stores can be, to the point where I don't think we should even call it a pet store anymore. We need a new term. But let's get Summer on to talk about the vision and the execution of the SHAP. My name is Bill Strand. Welcome to the Reptile Entrepreneur Podcast. Hello, Reptile Entrepreneurs. We are here with Summer Winston, who is the proprietor of the SHAP.
Yeah.
Hello, Summer.
Hey there, Bill. Hey there, everyone.
All right. We need to just jump right into what in the world is the SHAP?
Yeah. So the SHAP is my reptile education space and supply store. We also have reptiles, amphibians. My cat is not in the store, but on my table right now. But
Cats are welcome here.
Yeah, we have. It's a lot of things. At its core, the SHAP, what I want it to be is a community hub for reptile geeks to come together and see cool reptiles and learn about how to properly take care of them. A space for new folks to have a source that they can trust for information and that they can compare to other sources that they're finding like out in the internet and stuff like that. It's different when you're talking to someone in person, the level of accountability that person has to have versus when you're talking to someone on the internet or reading some random like blog or article or something. There's a physical person they could walk back up to and say, hey, you were wrong. So yeah.
So if I walked in the door of the SHAP,
yeah,
what would I find?
Oh man. So we have full-size enclosures for a lot of our animals. Like our chameleons, for example, are in 4x2x2s. Any babies that we sell, we have adults example enclosures for those adults so that they can see, one, this is how big these animals are going to get. This is a good example of a habitat, the way you should set them up or could set them up. And we also have all like the care supplies. I primarily, so overall, I don't sell anything we don't use. That's one of the rules. And like for lighting and stuff, like I use Arcadia, so we only sell Arcadia. I want folks to know that if they get a product from us for their animals, like it's something that they can actually trust, because like it's what I use, it's what I've tested, it's what I'm familiar with and I know about. And so you walk in and you see these like beautiful full-size enclosures. Most of them are bioactive. And we have an education center in the back that we call the lab, which is where we hold classes and workshops and all of that fun stuff. We have aquatics we have a small aquatic section because like a little part of my heart will always belong to the aquatic creature. So we have a small aquatic section, lizards, snakes, amphibians, inverts, all of that fun stuff. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Having a physical location like that is the dream of, well,
Mm-hmm.
everybody, me and everybody I know.
Yeah.
And there are serious, real life reasons why we don't do it.
Yeah.
And so, and I know you're fully aware of what all those reasons are.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Why set up a physical location beyond it's very cool and we'd all love
Yeah.
to, but
Mm-hmm.
how would you come at this in a way that says, yeah, I want to, how are you going to make it work
Yeah. So
financially?
I have a few reasons why I ultimately decided to make this decision. And I'm not like not talking bad about any specific reptile stores or locations or any of that, but I find like I'll get super excited when I find out about a new reptile store and I'm like, yeah, I'm pumped to go check it out. And 99% of the time when I step into that space, I'm wildly disappointed almost every time. If it's like
Yes.
the state of the store, most definitely the state of the animals. Like, I'm just always wildly disappointed by that. And when I think about it, like, that's what new reptile keepers are seeing. You know, they like there's shows that folks go into, which is like a whole nother level of like benefits and problematic things, you know. But when you're like local and you walk into your local reptile store and that's what you see, then that's what you think is normal, right? And if you walk in a store and let's say you get a bearded dragon, and in the store that bearded dragon is in like I don't know, a 10-gallon tank. And like, you're like, okay, I could, you know, this is reasonable. And oftentimes the stores don't give good, accurate care information. And then folks go home with that animal and then they're on their own. They don't really have a good source. Like oftentimes they can't go back to those stores and say, my like chameleon's eyes are closed or my bearded dragon isn't eating or why does their poop look like this, like they don't have that connection. So one of the core reasons I wanted to open a space was I wanted to give a different perspective of what a reptile store could be like and what keeping reptiles could be like, and not just the walking into the store and what that is and seeing what it's just physically like in the store, but also like showing folks that, hey, you could have an emotional safety net when you decide to add this new pet, this new living sentient creature into your life. Like it is possible for you to have support from your local store, right? So that was one of the reasons. And honestly, one of my favorite things is like when the kiddos come in. Saturday is a big day for kiddos. Our store is on our farmers market. It's at the start of our
Nice.
Saturday farmers market. So on Saturdays, we're full of kids and they're just like screaming and excited and like, oh my God, look at that. Like, it's really adorable to see them, like, see these animals, like, active and moving and engaging and healthy in habitats that leave a good imprint in terms of housing and like keeping these guys. And like it feels really good to see those like small impressions happening every week. There's some kids who come in literally every week with their parents just to look. Their parents are like, you can't have one yet, but we can go and we can look at the animals at the SHAP, you know. And
That is
so that was at the core. And like the other thing, like going back to the idea that a lot of reptile stores are really transactional. You walk in, you get the animal, you leave. You walk in, you get your feeders and leave. And I wanted to make something that encouraged you to stay and stick around. Where like my goal is for us to host our local herpetoculture club meetings out of the space, and we're going to have classes and workshops and stuff like that, so that it's it's a store at its core. Like, of course, like, don't get me wrong, we're a business and we have to make sales to survive. But it's also like a safety hub for geeks like me, you know? So, yeah, so that was at the core of being like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to make that decision and try it, you know?
Okay, so try to figure out how to ask this question.
Yeah.
This is a huge risk in today's world.
Yeah.
Today's a digital world, and I know I've thought about something. I mean, the things you were saying is like, oh, it mirrors what I would love to do, and I was pricing it out. How can I do this? And I realized I would have to breed chameleons and then sell them on the internet to pay for the overhead.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the question is, so why don't you just breed the chameleons
and just sell them on the
worry about the
internet
overhead?
and skip that extra expense. Yeah.
So what is it that it convinced you to take that step, put out this huge outlay?
Yeah.
Because I know I was watching you build the shop,
Yeah.
the SHAP,
Yeah.
and I know how much you put into that.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Yeah. So there was one big thing that made this possible. In my former life, I started a nonprofit that worked. We did like advocacy work for Brown and Black Indigenous communities in outdoor spaces, and I did that work for like a number of years, like 7 years or so, and we focused mainly within the realm of rock climbing as the main like vehicle for getting people outside. I was an avid climber, and then COVID hit, and it wasn't safe to climb outside because if you fell, you had to go to the hospital, and then the gyms were closed. So it's like kind of a disconnect between me and the world of climbing started to. That's my partner, Steph.
Hi, Steph.
A disconnect between me and the world of climbing started to happen. And so I had my nonprofit. I'd been doing that work for a while. I had never taken a salary. My board for years had been saying, Summer, propose a salary. We need to talk about this. And I'm like, yeah, I will. We'll totally talk about it. But I never did it. I just wanted the funds to just all go back into the community. And I was like, it's fine. I have a job. Like, I don't need a salary. So I kept putting it off. And then once COVID hit and like that void started to happen between me and climbing, like I took a look at what I want to do. I have my full-time job and I really enjoy teaching. I do a great deal, but I know I don't want to do this for the next like 10, 20, 30 years. Like I know I don't want to do that, you know? And so I started thinking about it and I was like, I think I want to dissolve my nonprofit and ask for a severance. So I had a meeting with my board. We talked about it. I proposed like a super moderate, like super modest. It was really low, honestly. And my board, like we had the meeting. I made my proposal. I told them what I would like to do. And they were like, okay, so you're not going to take any less than double that amount because we've been telling you to take a salary for like a half a decade and you've refused. And so that made it possible. Like that made the money possible in order to do this endeavor. So I was like, all right, like I have the funds are there and like don't get me wrong, like I had to make a bunch of tough decisions. Like I knew I wanted branding is my day, like that is what I'm trained in, market, like branding.
I've noticed you're very good at that.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I want there to be a really cohesive look when people walk in. And I'm like, in order to accomplish that, I need custom enclosures. Well, I'm like, if I want to have a store with full, like 40, 50 custom enclosures, like that's going to be like $50,000 plus. I can't afford that. So I was like, I'm really like ingenuitive and full of ingenuity. Sure,
You
there
know
you
what?
go.
I like that word.
There we go.
It's official.
It was cheaper for me to buy a CNC machine, come up with
Hmm.
enclosure designs, and do that. So there was certain things I had to do to make the exact dream that I wanted possible within the budget that I had to work with. And sure, it made everything a lot more work. You walk in the store and I literally built everything in there. Like all the enclosures, all the enclosure stands, like I built every single thing in there and it was
Very
backbreaking
nice.
labor. But it made it possible to do it. Without that,
Uh-huh.
it wouldn't have been possible, you know? So yeah, like that money made the opportunity more realistic that I could actually do it. And
Okay.
I would say it cost me probably around maybe 60,000 or so to pull everything together. All the
Okay.
enclosures plus inventory and all of that stuff. Plus like first month, last month security deposit, like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
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 So
And so, what is what are the revenue generating aspects of this business?
yes. So I've been like listening to a lot of podcasts and talking to a lot of folks I know who have either done stores before or know folks that are currently doing stores or they've worked in like management positions in stores. And a lot of people say that the main stream of income for most stores are feeders. And like I just don't like I see that that's floating a lot of stores, but I want us to more than float, and I don't like it's not 100% for what I want the store to be. I don't feel like it's 100% realistic to be like I can do all of that with feeders. Honestly, we do like really, really well with our dry goods. So like all our care supplies, and then my line of feeders that I design, we do really well with those guys too, like the feeding bowls and stuff like that. So like our main avenues I want to focus on is having high quality feeders for folks and then having high quality dry goods for folks as well, and then events, so like our classes, our programming, all of that. And then I also do like custom enclosure builds. I like to say the store is kind of like a showroom floor because
Hmm.
every model of enclosure that you see is available for purchase. I had a gentleman come in this week who was just really sweet, and he's like I just want like this enclosure with like a waterfall on my desk while I'm working. And so he commissioned me to do a custom terrascape for him.
Okay.
And so I want there always to be like multiple avenues that we can rely on. And I was listening to this other podcast. I can't remember which one, but they made I think it was maybe an Animals at Home episode. And they made a really good point. And they were like, with reptiles, like say someone comes in and they buy their first Joel asserted from me, then they're going to come back so many times over the course of the year for all the different supplies that they need, right? So for me, that means it's really important more than anything to develop good relationships with folks as they come in. And so on some level, like I thought about what are we really selling here? Like, are we selling feeders? Are we selling animals? And I was like, I think on the most basic level, what we're really selling here are relationships and connections with each other, because that is what's going to help build a bond with customers so that they want to come to us and choose us over other options. I had a customer the other day and I was like, oh, we have the best prices on crickets in town. And they were like, you know what? Honestly, if your crickets were more expensive, I would still come here and get them, you know? And I'm like, that's the type of loyalty that you get when you build relationships with folks, you know? So that's how I'm thinking about our streams of income, to have it be really diverse but also focused, like our enclosures, our feeders, our dry goods, and Our animal sales, I want animal sales to take a back seat to all of those things because we have rules around buying our animals. You can't just walk in and say, oh, I really like this chameleon. I'm going to buy it and take it home. You have to be vetted first. And that's another thing that's a bit different from other stores. Like, we want to see proof of your enclosure. We want to have conversations with you to make sure you understand how to properly care for these animals. But in order for us to be able to do that sustainably, animal sales have to take a backseat to other things. Like, those other things have to be able to serve as more stable sources of income. Yeah.
Do you have an online component to your sales?
Yeah, we do. So we have our online store, our website, and we had that before we even opened the store. And then we also have traveling to reptile shows too. And like, in all honesty, like, the space that we picked, our overhead isn't very high, which is awesome. And so just vending, like, the three main shows that we're going to continue to vend are four, depending on how, I'm not sure how it's like playing out, but like all the reptile super shows, like doing just all the reptile super shows, and then our local Vallejo show, we're their official dry goods vendor. So doing those shows, just that covers the overhead of the store, just those things, right? So there, we have a couple of different safety nets. It's like, we're going to do those shows, and just the revenue for that will make sure that the overhead of the store is taken care of. I still have my full-time job, which is like super hopeful. But we're in our second month, and we're all like, this month we are already in a place where like I could pay all the bills from the store with the money we've made so far this month. So, and we're like halfway through. So it's a pretty good
wonderful
feeling.
So what have you been warned about that could be trouble in the future? What things have you been warned about?
Yeah. So, let's see. I've been told by folks, like, don't focus on the animals because you don't have to feed a light bulb. So that was one really good piece of advice. And they're like, just be careful with the amount of animals you bring in, because every animal, you have to like feed them and take care of them. They're all going to be like an expense until you can sell them. And depending on the animal, the species, the price point, like, they may not be profitable by the time you actually can sell that animal or get that animal into a home. So I was like, especially with like our model for how we were planning to do our animal sales. So it was that, like, you don't have to feed a light bulb, and I that was great. One of my other friends, Robin with Red Line Shipping, he's one of my good friends, and he was like, I told him what I wanted to do, and he was like, you're gonna hate it. And I'm like, Robin, he was like, no, seriously, you're gonna hate it. And for him, it was like, he had a store back in the day, and the experience of it was folks coming in, they'd buy an animal and come back and be like, I killed it, I want to get another one, or it died, I want to get another one. So it was just this really heartbreaking experience of like folks treating these animals as though they're disposable. And I could totally understand that. I would hate that as well, and I'm like, well, that's a part of the reason why I want to do this. Because when I told him, I was like, I'm banking on the idea that no one goes and buys their first reptile, like spends any amount of money on a pet, and they're like, I sure can't wait to kill this when I get home, So I'm banking on the idea that folks actually want to have a good experience with these animals, and that we can educate them enough so that they'll understand that our process is meant to help them have the best possible experience that they can with these animals. So it was that. He was just like, you're gonna hate it. And I was like, I'm gonna have to try it and find out how much I hate it on my own, I guess. I've heard lots of folks say that stores like this can't survive. the idea, like one of like I consider him to be one of my mentors. He owns our local fish store. Super great guy. I love him because he's a straight shooter, and I love straight shooters. And then he was like, "Oh, he's like, you're gonna go broke over there with all your ethics." And I'm like, dude, if
All your epics?
all your ethics.
Oh,
Like,
ethics.
yeah,
Oh.
try to like do things in like a really ethical way.
Ethics are expensive.
Yeah, ethics are expensive. I agree. I agree with that. And so it's like I've heard folks say like in other spaces on other podcasts that like, oh, like stores like that just they don't make it, they can't survive. But my thought process behind that is if we stick with that mindset and no one like is ever like, oh, you can't make it, a store that puts animal welfare first, that even like thinks about the idea of animal welfare and like animal rights, oh my gosh, that think about those types of things. If we keep telling ourselves that you can't make it, then no one's going to try, and then there's no improvement. We're going to stay where we are. And like I love our community, and I don't think anyone that's in our community looks around and says, "Oh yeah, we're perfect." There's no change necessary here. Like we've grown as much as we can grow. Like I don't think anyone says that, and I want to be a part of that. A part of like the push for change and the catalyst for change. And I think a lot of that starts with properly educating new keepers, more than it relies on changing the minds of existing like old heads, that have been around for a while. So, and yeah, so that's a part of our focus. Like we have something for everything, but I really want to make sure we're doing a good job with new folks, with new keepers, and giving them a good experience, So, yeah.
What were some of the biggest challenges getting to opening day?
Stamina and money. I think like when I talk to folks that want to do something like this, like I know this really awesome better breeder and better fish importer. Her name's PNW Pacific Northwest. Yeah, PNW Bettas, and she's young. She's like 21, I think. And like we've had many conversations after I started opening the store around her dream of wanting to open a fish store up in Oregon, and she's like doing it now. And I told her, I was like, the biggest thing is like money and prioritizing. I'm really bad at prioritizing. Like I think it's all important. I need to do all of it. And so through this process, I really learned like actually there are levels to this, and like sure I may want to build this like 8 foot by 6 foot by 3 foot aquatic enclosure for like some specific species, but like maybe not today. So like that was one of the challenges for me, like really figuring out and prioritizing, like when I have a goal in my head, like, and especially because like I'm neurodivergent, when I see something in my head, like I want that to be exactly what comes out on the other end, And so I really that was a challenge for me, like really prioritizing and understanding, hey, you don't have to do it all today. One of my friends said to me, she's like, hey, my friend Andrea, she was like, it's okay to focus on one challenge at a time. Like, that's okay to do. I was like, oh yeah, you're right, one at a time. So that was one of the biggest challenges in realizing that like, hey, you're not rich, you don't have infinite funds, like you're a teacher for God's sakes. Like you have to really prioritize the most important elements, and this is truly a marathon and not a sprint. You're going to have so much time to slowly add all those additional things that you want to be there. So yeah, and then just having stamina, because I built Benny, buddy, I love you, but you gotta stop, my man. Because I built everything in the store myself, I was exhausted, like body hurt, mentally exhausted, and I have a full-time job along with that. like it was, I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to ever build another thing. And like that's one of my favorite hobbies, like building things. And I was like, I don't want to build another thing ever. I don't ever want to turn this CNC machine on ever again. Like I really got burnt out on just the building process. And the owner of a reptile store in Arizona, I reached out to a bunch of different people who like I see the work they're doing in other places and like respect the work they're doing. And so I reached out and was like, hey, like any advice, any tips, anything like that. So yeah, the owner of Ever Evolving Exotics in Arizona, he was like, you just need to get the doors open. He's like, that's it. Just because I was like, God, I was like, now that I'm this far, I'm super afraid to open. Like I was terrified to actually open. And I kept like pushing back the date because I don't know why. I was just like, I do know why. I think it's like I invested so much energy and emotion and love into the space. I was like really nervous to have people come in and like have opinions and stuff, you know. And
Yeah.
but he's like you just got to get the door open, and once you get the doors open, like you'll figure everything out from there. He's like, you're ready, just open the doors. So yeah, that was that part just in and of itself. Just opening the doors was so challenging and scary.
So you had a vision for what you want this to be.
Uh-huh.
What percentage would you say you met on opening day?
I would say on opening day, I would say I was about 80% there of what I
Okay.
wanted it to be. Yeah. And 75, 80%. And I would say right now I'm at about 90%. There's
Okay.
we have one part of the store, there's like kind of like a hall of enclosures, I guess. There's like enclosures on both sides, and I want there to be a bench in the middle of there so people could like sit and just observe the
Hmm.
animals in their enclosures. So yeah, there's like little stuff like that I want to add in. And there's like a sofa in the front of the store, and I want to build a terrarium coffee table and fill it with vampire crabs. So,
Oh, yeah.
so there's like little stuff like that I want, and then there's like little issues like um, my dart frog my frog enclosures. I didn't seal them as well as I needed to. So there's like an ongoing leak from two of them, and I'm just like, I really don't want to. They're like fully terrascaped, and I'm like, I really don't
Yeah.
want to break
Yeah.
those down, but I know I have to, you know.
Hmm.
So I would say now I'm at about 90% of where I want it to be. There's still more work to be done. But I was at like 75, 80% when we opened. Yeah.
Okay. So looking to the future, actually, before we do that, I want to say anybody else who has a desire to
Hmm.
open up a retail location,
Yeah.
what would I know we can't get into detail,
Yeah.
we'll be here all day, but high level,
Yeah.
what would your advice be?
Okay, so I know this is going to sound cheesy, but this has been like my mindset since COVID. It's like I look at COVID and the way that it affected and changed our lives. Like it completely changed the direction of what I thought I wanted to be doing with my time. Like I thought I wanted to like eventually do my nonprofit work full time. Like that's what I thought I wanted to do. And like COVID came in and completely shifted that. And then also just the amount of lives that were lost during that time and are like honestly still being lost, it shifted my mindset, and I started asking myself a question. And like I became very aware of my mortality. I hadn't started thinking about that stuff yet. So I started asking myself the question, like when you're like 95 and like laying there in your last moments, if you ask yourself the question, do you wish you would have opened this door, or do you wish you would have done X, Y, and Z, or do you wish you would have stayed at that job, whatever, like what will your answer be? So that's what I've been I so what I was like, all right, Summer, when you're 95 and you're laying there and you're like, do you wish you would have opened a reptile store? Like, and I was like, yeah, my answer is immediately a yes. Like, I would regret it that I didn't do it. And so, like, I just, the hardest part is just doing it, like starting the steps to do it. And for me, that started with just going look at spaces. Like, I just started looking at retail spaces that I've been eyeballing for a while. I'm like, I'm gonna call the realtor. I'm gonna like go look at it. Like, I'm just going to gather information and see where that goes. And honestly, when this path started, it started sooner than I thought it would have. I went look at a space and I really liked it. I had been eyeballing it for a while and I was talking to the landlord and like I filled out the application and I got approved and he sent over the lease and I started reading through the lease and I'm like, this lease is weird. And like my partner is an attorney and she was reading it and she's like, yeah, this lease is kind of weird. And when I tried to communicate with him about it, it was he was kind of hostile. So then I was like, I'm going to go look at another space. And then I looked at this other space. And honestly, I wasn't like, I am like ready to do this moment. But when I looked at the space that I'm in now, I was like, the price is great. The space is great. I'm just going to do it. So like if you're really interested and you really want to go do it, just just start small. Like just go look at spaces. Like it doesn't cost you any money. Like just a little time and energy to go like look at spaces and dream about it. And you may find that the more you think about it and the more you start doing actual physical actions, that it becomes something that is a lot more attainable than you thought it was, you know? I also think it doesn't have to be as expensive. I think it could be way more expensive than I made it, and it could also be way less expensive than I made it. Like I didn't have to build everything custom, and like I didn't have to do it in the way that I did, and I think it would have been more cost effective if I wouldn't have built it the way that I built it. You know, like you walk in and the first thing you see is a 6 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot planted tank for my giant butterfly agamas, you know, like that building that one by itself, like just in materials was almost $1,000, like just in the materials, you know. And so yeah, it's not as scary as it sounds. It's honestly not as hard as it seems. And if you just start taking small steps, like you may start realizing like, oh, I may actually be able to do this thing, you know. So I know it was long-winded. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, that's exactly what we want. We want to hear all the little details. By the end of the first year, for your first year anniversary,
yeah,
what do you hope the SHAP would be?
Yeah. So by the end of the first year, I want us to be consistently having at least monthly classes on various topics taught by various members of our community that are getting paid for their labor to teach those classes. I want us to be planning a summer camp for kids going into our second summer being open. I want to like have it where folks just like come in and use our Wi-Fi and work on like, I don't know, write their book or whatever it is. Like kind of coffee shop vibes, but in a reptile store.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Yeah.
A coffee shop vibe, a reptile. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I want that to be happening in the space. I want to be very close to possibly being able to quit my job. Like that, yeah, like those are some of the things. And I want the space to be known for like having interesting animals you don't see anywhere else. And like being warm and welcoming, a good place to go if you have any questions. And I want people to think of us as like, oh yeah, they have all the things we need. Yeah. Yeah.
Summer, this has been a wonderful talk.
Yeah.
And I am so happy to see that you have created this incredible
thank you.
location.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a vet and I said, okay, I need to get up to Vallejo.
Yes,
I need to get up there.
You guys would be
And-
so welcome, Bill. If you guys come up, Bill, y'all can stay with us. Like you're so welcome. Seriously, we have plenty of room.
I've been checking airline tickets already. I need to get up there.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
This is a business expense, right? I need
Yeah, you could come do a chameleon workshop. It would be so awesome.
I would love to.
I would love that. Yeah.
All right, then. Summer, we're just going to keep track of what you are doing and what you're accomplishing up there. It is wonderful. Thank you very much for coming and sharing.
Yeah, it's always good to chat with you, Bill, and to just be a part of the beautiful community that you create with your podcast and just your generosity with your time and information. Anytime you're like, Summer, do you? Yes. Before you even finish, I am in.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.